It's not for the faint of heart starting a new business for sure. But as you stick to it and you just adapt and modify and test and just keep on going, it's impossible to fail. Like the problem is most people they just stop. They don't see the results. They don't see the success. They take the failures as failures and they don't keep going. If people would just be able to learn past that, I feel like they'd be amazed at what they could accomplish.
Congrats on getting beyond $1 million. What got you here won't always get you there. This is a podcast for entrepreneurs who want to reach beyond their 7-figure business and scale to 8, 9, and even 10 figures. I'm Brad Weimert, and as the founder of Easy Pay Direct, I have had the privilege to work with more than 30,000 businesses, allowing me to see the data behind what some of the most successful companies on the planet are doing differently. Join me each week as I dig in with experts in sales, marketing, operations, technology, and wealth building. And you'll learn some of the specific tools, tactics, and strategies that are working today in those multi-million, 8, 9, and 10-figure businesses. Life can get exciting beyond $1 million. People talk about the creator economy, and there is no question that today it is possible to jump online, produce content, sell it, and create a living for yourself. But like most things, it is difficult to be elite in that category and scale something to an 8, 9-figure mark. Today's guest, Krista Mashore, has been producing more than $1 million a month for the last 31 consecutive months. She was a real estate agent turned real estate coach and entrepreneurial coach. And we talk about the details. The thing that impresses me most about Krista is her relentless testing and persistence in figuring out how to make the business model work. This episode is granular with amazing marketing details and tricks. And we also back out and talk about kind of the strategic overview of that. If you are a marketing person, you're going to love this. If you're an entrepreneur in general, it's an entertaining episode, and we pull far enough back that if you don't want to be in the weeds, you'll still get a lot out of it. Without further ado, Krista Mashore. Krista Mashore, I appreciate you carving out some time.
Thanks for having me, Brad. I appreciate it.
For sure. So I want to dive into things right away with you. You are kind of directly in our ideal client profile for Easy Pay Direct. We work with a ton of people that crush it in the info product space, and you are one of them. So you are, backdrop here, you have a large real estate background and now a real estate education background. Can you give me a little context for like size and shape of your business right now for background?
Yeah. So I've been in the coaching industry for about 6 years. Prior to that, I was in the real estate business, top 1% agent. And now we have about 1,000 students, and we bring on around 1,000 leads into our pipeline every single month that either go to a webinar or to a virtual event. And we do anywhere from $1 million plus a month for the past 31 months in a row. So for the overall business model for coaching. So it's been really, really great. Now we actually also are coaching entrepreneurs, teaching them the model that we've been using over the past 31 plus months to hit $1 million months.
Awesome. So I want to get into the business model itself, but before we do that, tell me about the path of becoming a real estate agent and then the transition into coaching and information.
Yeah. And there might be a little bit of a lag, everyone. So sorry about that if you noticed that. me and Brad are trying to figure that out. But yeah, so prior to becoming a real estate agent, I was a teacher. I taught third grade for 6 years, loved it, and then kind of got sort of forced into becoming a real estate agent because of some really exciting life events that now looking back were great, but at the time didn't seem so much that way. Got into real estate for 17 years, did really, really well, and then eventually realized that, my passion was really helping other people. And I had realized that I was an expert in real estate, and I knew that I could probably help other people kind of find the success that I had in real estate because I did it very non-conventionally. And so I took the leap and left my nice, safe real estate career, one of which was very exhausting and tiring and working like a psychopath, quite frankly. I averaged about 135 homes a year at the time when I was in real estate, and I was just tired. So I knew that I could take my skills and knowledge and expertise that I had in real estate and help other people. So I just took the plunge and left real estate full time, just at the 6-year mark. And it's been great. It's been hard and challenging and fun all at the same time.
Wild. So now you dropped a couple stats, which are the info product business, the coaching business has been doing $1 million a month for 31 months consecutively. But you also said that you were top 1% realtor. When you were doing real estate, what was unconventional about the approach, and where were you? I mean, 135 homes a year is a lot. So where were you relative to revenue, and like what was the business model then that was allowing you to do 135 homes a year?
Yeah, so I kind of went out with a bang. My first year in real estate, I sold 69 homes as a solo agent out of desperation. Quite frankly, I had 2 little girls at home, a brand new mortgage, and empty bank accounts. So I kind of had to do it, and I just did it. Just did really well as a real estate agent. When I left being a realtor, I was making about $1.8 million in GCI a year, bringing home about $1.5 million, I'd say, after expenses. And I did it utilizing social media and video and digital marketing. So I basically had more of an attraction-based marketing model in real estate. I became a marketer, which then led me to be a top producer really early on in the business. And then once Facebook ads came out, 12 plus years ago or so, and video, I just sort of continued to dominate the market and made it to where I was constantly showing up in people's news feeds, their social media feeds, with just educational content about real estate, about the community. And I didn't have to do open houses or door knock or cold call or do any of the normal things that agents do. I basically just learned how to be a top marketer in real estate through education. And then therefore I attracted the business. So that's the same model that I teach real estate agents to do, is like how to become basically a top marketer to become a top producer.
I love that. Yeah, that seems like a pretty logical path. Though I will say that most people, when they make a transition, don't just quit what they're doing and shift altogether into coaching. So how did you decide, like, I am not selling homes anymore and I'm moving 100% into coaching? Is that what it was? Was there any overlap? And what was the thought process there?
There was a little bit of overlap. So I knew I wanted to make a change. So I brought my brother into the real estate business about a year prior and just kind of like showed him the ropes. It wasn't because I was planning on leaving. It was because he was in a job he didn't like and it was horrible on his body and he had a great personality. And I said, hey, you'll be great at real estate. So let me just go ahead and teach you the ropes. So I taught my brother how to pretty much be me. He went on 150 plus appointments with me. And I showed him how to, take listings. And then one day I just got to the point where I was so tired of real estate and I didn't realize how much I was working, quite frankly. I mean, I was working a lot to sell. My best year, I did 169 transactions as a solo agent and with an assistant and a transaction coordinator. So it is a lot of work. I didn't realize just how much I was working and how burnt out I was. And one day I just got to the point where I was like, I had went to a training and realized, I could be a coach. Like, I know I could do this. And I just called my brother and said, hey, I'm leaving the business. You're taking over. And he's like, okay. In a couple months, I'm like, no, tomorrow, like, get over here. And like, I'm done. So that's what I did. And pretty much, it was nice though, because I was still getting income from that business, which I definitely needed. I mean, nobody tells you to start a new business. I think I hit the $1 million mark in about 11 months in coaching. But no one tells you it takes like $1,200,000 to make $1 million, right? When you first change jobs and how hard it will be. And you need, it's a lot. So looking back, I'm not even sure how I did that, quite frankly, but yeah, I left and I utilized the money from my real estate business to support my coaching business and did pretty good. Wasn't quite as profitable as I had hoped as early on. But then when COVID hit, we were at about a 6-week burn rate in my coaching business. And I realized I had to completely change the way I was doing things. So I started doing virtual events. And so from the time COVID hit on, we've just done one virtual event after another with this whole proven model process that I have. And we just every month just tweak and define and optimize one aspect of the event. And some optimizations have been amazing. Some have been really bad, just depending on what we're doing. But luckily we're learning and now we're teaching other people this model so they don't have to make the same mistakes that I did. And we're just basically giving them a blueprint of okay, here's exactly how you do what we're doing. And we've had people have great success. No one's hit the $1 million a month market. We've had people do 500,000. We've had people do 600,000 in a day, which is pretty cool. But which is really great, actually, considering they don't have this huge team like I do. And so it's been nice.
Awesome. Yeah, it's huge. It's also atypical in the info product space, tremendously. And you mentioned that it took time to get there. I have a couple questions around that. But the first is, you said that you went to a seminar and saw, I think, probably the info or the coaching model. And you're like, oh, I can do this. Let me run with it. Whose seminar was it? What caught your attention?
I actually just watched a webinar from Russell Brunson on expert secrets. So I watched a webinar, 90-minute webinar, picked up the phone, paid $15,000, flew to Boise, did an event. Then I joined his inner circle, $25,000 investment, then a $50,000 investment, then a $150,000 investment. And I stayed with him for quite a few years. And just being around those people and like learning the possibilities, it wasn't like they didn't give you a blueprint of like, here's your funnels, here's your, like they said, this is what you need to do, so there's a lot of trial and error and figuring it out on our own. Being around the group and the ideas and the collaboration and seeing the success of others and being around that mastermind, it just completely elevated my belief and my drive. And Napoleon Hill says like there's nothing around being around other people and having somebody that's kind of been there and done that you could sort of replicate, and was a game changer for me. So I've invested over $1 million in my own personal coaching and growth over the past 6 years from just about everyone. I mean, I've hired so many people, some good, some bad, and just kind of, learn through trial and error. And I wouldn't say it's an info product. It's like, it truly is a coaching company that we have. I mean, we literally handhold people, give them a business blueprint, the funnels, the worksheets, everything they need, like to kind of start their own business, whether it be in real estate or for the proven model. So it's more than just like, hey, do this. It's more of a, here are the things, now tweak them and make them your own kind of a deal. So yeah, it's been, and we really, we put a lot into the coaching program. It's not just like, hey, take this course. I mean, we have hands-on training every single day and office hours and accountability coaching and everything you can to help somebody be successful. Because I think just going through a course on your own is very difficult and most people aren't successful. But when you have help and support and guidance and accountability and you have other people like you can talk to and be around on a regular basis, it really makes it a lot easier,
Yeah, I think there's no question about that. And I clump those things together because almost all information product companies that we work with, there's an escalation path. So it starts with some front end offer it might be a lead magnet, it might be a membership site online, and it almost all of them escalate to a live event or a coaching package in the back end. And that is the escalation path of the model. And it's an interesting point because you delineate those two things really clearly, certainly in your head. But I've heard you speak before about high ticket. And you can just tell me, I'm not even going to make an assumption here, but what are the price points of what you sell and how does the model work? So if it's mostly coaching, what does that look like? Because I think that plays into the success in some capacity, but I'd love to learn more about that.
Yeah. So originally when I first started coaching, my highest converting high ticket offer, and high ticket now is anywhere from $25,000 to we've received upwards of $200,000 in revenue from our coaching clients. Our average is around a $25,000 offer for either 90 days or 12 months, depending on if you're an entrepreneur or a real estate agent. But originally it started off with just a book, right? We did a book funnel, and the book funnel, people would read the book, then they'd get onto a phone call with the setter, and then a closer into high ticket. And we were doing anywhere from $500,000 to $700,000 a month with that model, but it was very difficult to be profitable because we had setters and closers, and a lot of salespeople are very difficult. In case you haven't, you don't know about that, I'm sure you do. They can be kind of hard to deal with sometimes. And so when we changed the model to a lead magnet, to a webinar, to a 3-day virtual event, we got rid of the closers and we just would send everybody straight to book a call. And that is what's really transformed our business is creating high ticket offers. We don't have any low ticket offers. We're actually in the process now, other than a book, we're in the process now of changing that because the market has kind of changed. And we're sort of going to do the whole membership model where people sign into a software and then they get a free trial. And from there, they get invited to either a webinar or to an event. And then we sell them high ticket. So our high ticket offer is $25,000. We've also done a high ticket offer, $60,000, again, from a virtual event and sold on that as well. But we feel that we will scale more if we bring the price down to $25K and do it for a 90-day offer instead of $50,000, $60K at a 6-month offer, which is now what we're going to be launching in January. And so, yeah, honestly, Brad, it's a lot of trial and error, right? It's like seeing who your audience is, what works for them, And not every launch works. I mean, we just did a launch and I mean, we did a couple $100,000 on it, but we pretty much sort of broke even from the expense and the cost to put the offer on. But the cool thing is that we're learning our audience. We're also learning that we need to kind of change who our avatar is, our client, our ideal client, because the market is wanting something different than what we're actually offering. So because of that, and it's really important for everyone to hear, is that every offer that you make is not going to be hit it out of the park. And you have to be willing to adjust and modify and look at what you did and be willing to change what you did in order to make things work. And I think a lot of people, they give up because they don't see it working and the expense of it, obviously. And I see my own students doing that, right? Like they'll do great and then they'll lose a few students or they'll have a hard month. And instead of them just keep going on and trying to figure out a way to move funds around or to even make an investment in the business, they just give up. And so instead of struggling for a little while, they struggle forever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do very much. And that was a lot. So I want to break that apart a little bit because the elements of kind of how to know when your market doesn't want what you're selling anymore. So when it's time to pivot, like that's an interesting topic in and of itself. And the other is I want to clarify the model. So basically it's you had a book funnel, which is some lead magnet. You're selling a low dollar thing. And that I'm assuming is anything from, $7 to $30. And the purpose of that is to help cover the cost of the leads that come in. And then from there, you're selling, or is the virtual event a free event, or is that what the paid event is? Are you pushing people to the free event and then selling them on the high ticket from there?
Yeah. So we basically market for the event 10 days prior, because anything past 10 days, the no-shows increase and all that great stuff, right? So we only market for an event 10 days prior. So if during the month we have one virtual event and we have one or two 90-minute webinars or trainings, right? So if the 90-minute training is next, I will drive traffic to that training. And then from that training, that's a free training, the offer is going to the 3-day event. If the 3-day event is next up on the calendar, then I will drive traffic to that. And that's anywhere from a $47 to a $100 offer for a 3-day virtual event. We've tested like all different price points and we found that, $47 gets us the lowest cost per acquisition, which is still pretty darn high, right? It's around $240-ish, anywhere from $180 to $350, quite frankly, to get people to get to the virtual event. The cost for getting people to the free webinar is around $25 to $40, depending on, the month, the season, the climate of what's happening. And yeah, so it's a free event, webinar, driving traffic to the 3-day event. Or it's a paid ticket to the 3-day event, $47 to $97, which from that 3-day virtual event, we offer a high ticket program ranging in the past anywhere from $18,000 to $60,000. Our sweet spot we're finding is around $25,000. And that $25,000 mark is right around what we've done, anywhere from $1 to $2 million in a month from high ticket offer from a virtual event.
Awesome. And so there are a couple interesting parts of that. And the first one is that you're shifting between a free webinar and a 3-day event, and you'll go straight to the 3-day event if it's closer. So why the gap? Does it not still make sense to push people into the free webinar, or did you just find that it wasn't necessary?
Yeah, so basically, we used to even do a 5-day challenge, right? So this just kind of shows you all the things we've tested. So we did a 5-day challenge for about 18 months, and then we realized that, challenges kind of got they were a little saturated in the market. People weren't taking them as seriously. Getting someone to show up for 5 days, even though it was only an hour a day, like conversions went down by the 3rd, 4th day, like less than half the people would even show up, even though the content was great and people loved it. But we found that the cost per acquisition and the conversion was actually higher on a 90-minute webinar. So, and again, that can change, right? Just based upon our data. So that just shows you how important it is for you to test and tweak things and not to get so comfortable with what you're doing without testing. And we try our hardest, and we're not always good at this. Like there's plenty of times where we're playing catch up, but we try to sort of get ahead of things that might happen. For example, fatigue, right? Like our challenge started getting fatigue and it wasn't converting as much. And so the webinar was doing better. But we have found that whether or not somebody goes to a webinar or just goes to the event, there's like less than 0.5% in conversion to high ticket, meaning they don't have to go to the webinar and then to the event to convert at the same rate. If they just go to the 3-day event, the conversions are almost exactly the same. But the difference is that the cost to drive traffic to a free webinar is substantially less, right? It's between $25 and $40 instead of between, $180 and $350 for the high ticket 3-day event. But the bad thing about the free challenge is that about 10% of people only show up, no matter what we do, even though now we're incorporating AI and we have all these follow-up sequences and these conversion sequences. We're doing everything we can to get more people to show up. It used to be closer to 24%, but it's gone down for whatever reason. So now we're working on getting more people to show up. So there's just all these different factors. So they're both equally important. I can still build my list while I'm doing the free webinar. The cost per acquisition, cost per lead is much cheaper, right? But the show up rate is the no-show rate is much, much higher, right? But I still have to own the leads. I then can nurture those leads. I can build my list. I continue to offer them the 3-day event later on, just straight from that list, right? But we still want to make sure that we're like, we know if we can, the biggest problem I have, honestly, Brad, is getting more people to the event. We've tried Google ads. We've tried like TikTok ads, everything you can imagine. Our best source of getting people to the event is Facebook ads. And it's still difficult. And you know how Facebook is, right? It's very volatile. So both work. Both have there's pros and cons of both. And the reason why we have the webinar is because I don't want to offer, if I have an event in 30 days, I don't want to drive traffic to that event 30 days later, because if anything from 10 days or sooner, then there's a lot more no-shows. So we don't want to start marketing directly to the 3-day event prior to 10 days before, because we'll have a lot of fall off, even though they paid for it.
Love it. Yeah. So keeping engagement up. So we're super, super granular on the marketing front, which I love. And I want to stay there because I think it's super important to the people that geek out on marketing. But I also want to clarify a little bit of language and then back out to some of like the systemic things that you're doing to help people think about the general approach. So first and foremost, when you talk about, the free webinars being more cost effective to get people to, for those that aren't driving a ton of traffic, it's because the offer's free. So you just get more people clicking through to take the free offer than the paid, right? So from there, one of my questions is, when you look at the aggregate funnel, the first several steps here ultimately are all in the name of paying for advertising to sell the high ticket. So how do you think about what information you're delivering and what value you're providing from the book to the free webinar to the 3-day virtual event that all tees up into coaching, right? What is it that's getting people in there that they're excited about? And what are you delivering that keeps them engaged throughout that process? That's not in the coaching or how it works with the coaching, right?
Yeah. So, we give away a lot. Like, you would probably think almost too much, quite honestly. Like even on both my programs, like, people can read my book, Sell 100 Homes a Year, and they could take that book, and if they actually did it, they would be awesome. I just wrote a book, $1 Million a Month Model. In fact, if you'd like, I can give you a chapter of it. It's called 7 Levers for 7 Figures, which literally breaks down everything from A to Z on how we drive traffic, we acquire a customer, and how we convert them. I can give you that chapter of the book. But if somebody even read the book, it'd be like they could take that book and go, man, I could do this on my own. But there's 8 million nuanced steps in between, even though we give away so much. And even at the event, like, we're literally teaching so much that my sales team was like, I think you give away too much. And, I've had people basically tell me that they can just do it on their own after, watching it. And thanks to you, like, they literally have made hundreds of thousands of dollars just for free watching your $47 event. Maybe we should cut back a little bit. But I think that the more you give, it's like Alex Hormozi always talks about this, right? It's like value, value, value. And I've been talking about that, serve, not sell, value, value, value for 6 years. If your stuff that's free isn't good enough and making a big enough impact, nobody's going to want to take the next step, and you're not going to get their attention to want to sit down for a 90-minute webinar or a 3-day event. But if your stuff is good enough, they're going to want to. And most smart people realize that you can Google anything, and you can read any book, but to really, I have literally given people our funnels, our workbooks, our slides, our email sequences, like our SOPs, our sales training. Like, I've given them my entire business model, right? That we've spent over $28 million like building, and they're these awesome entrepreneurs that are smart and well equipped and have teams, and they still have tons of questions and need a ton of help. So there's just so many things in between. So I don't think you can ever give away too much. So we give away high value at the webinar. high value. It's a 3-day event, high value with every lead magnet that we make, enough that it gets people excited about wanting to show up to the next step and trusting me and seeing me as the authority. And as you know, Brad, like right now, I believe it's harder than ever to gain authority because there's so many fakes out there. Like what's that saying? For those that can't do, then teach, right? There's so many people that are, saying they've done something that they've never even done, or they're quite frankly just lying about it, or they're taking the success of somebody else, which we've all seen. So it's getting harder and harder to earn someone's trust. So therefore, you need to really, really give as much value as possible and elevate your authority and build that relationship with somebody. So I believe before you can sell somebody, you need to earn the right. It's kind of like most people I feel like they kind of dive in for the kill. They want to jump in the sack before they ever date. I highly believe in dating people, flirting with them, holding their hand, taking them to lunch and dinner before I ask for a kiss. And I think a lot of marketers miss that step. And so we do that and we do it really, really well and we earn their trust. And then once they get into our world, we then completely over deliver even more so than we did on the beginning, because as you know, you have to constantly be selling people. Like you need to sell them once they say yes. You need to sell them when they write the check. You need to sell them throughout the entire training because there's so many roadblocks to success. So you're constantly got to be like positively influencing them to want to keep going for themselves.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. The other part of that is, and you've alluded to it several times, but there's this never-ending change in the landscape of specifically paid ads, but our marketing world in general right now, let alone what you've got going in the real estate space as of, October of 2023. But just from a marketing consideration, everything's ever changing. So the other question for me is, a lot of people historically in the direct response marketing space, evergreen things were super popular. And so there was hey, how can I create a webinar or a 3-day training and repurpose the content as often as possible? Are all the events live for you, or do you repurpose stuff or keep it static for some period of time before you redo it? How do you think about that portion of it, both in terms of your funnel and products that you deliver?
That's awesome. So we don't do a whole lot that is evergreen. We've tried to do the challenge evergreen. We do like some of the recordings. We'll let people like watch on demand because entrepreneurs are busy, especially with our entrepreneurs. But with our 3-day event, I did it 18 months in a row, every single month live.
Oh.
And the reason I did that was because I wanted to be able to learn. Like we would go back and look at the comments. We'd look at the questions. We'd look at what people liked, what they didn't, or what they felt like was missing. And we constantly would tweak and massage and change the order. We looked at show up rate. We looked at return rate. We looked at fall off rate. We looked at everything you can imagine. We track everything during these events. And so we would continue to do it over based upon the feedback we were getting and all the questions and everything else, and move things around until it got to even things like somebody would say, oh, there's too many testimonials. We would change the event next month and say, hey, the reason you're seeing these success stories is because we want you to see yourself as one of these success stories. It's not a testimonial. It's you seeing that you can do this. So anytime you see a success story, I want you to say, that's me. I can do it. I'm next, right? So we would take everything from the comments and the feedback that was happening and change and massage the event to help it convert more. So that's why we did it 18 months in a row. It was exhausting. Then we took the event and for 6 months, it was an evergreen live version. So I wasn't there. It was recordings of me, but my team was there. There was a live MC. It ran live. And so it looked like it was live. We told people there was recordings. Part was recording, part was live. We didn't lie about it, but it was done so well that they forgot that it wasn't live. And then it would get a little stale. The market changed, as you said, August of 23, the whole market crashed with the recession and interest rates doubling. So then we had to redo the event based upon the market shift and our languaging matching the messaging in the market. That ran for a couple of months, and then we did it again. So now it's at a point where the real estate one is running. It's been like 5 or 6 months that it's been the same one, right? And it's a live virtual encore type of thing where I'm not there. It's recordings of me, but my team is. And we're going to be redoing it brand new in January because we're revamping it, changing the name and all that good stuff, as well as doing the same thing for the entrepreneurial one. So we'll run the entrepreneurial one probably 4, 5, 6 months in a row before we let that one run evergreen for a few months. And we do that for a couple reasons. Number one is I get exhausted. I can only handle so much. It's like 3 days coaching is kind of a lot. And also we're even testing with entrepreneurs. Is 3 days too much? Maybe we should make it maybe we need to shorten it. Maybe we need to, because a lot of people say, hey, 3 days is a lot. It's a long time, even though it's great content, but we do notice that the people that are the ones that are there and stay and sit and are excited about it, keep showing up, they're the ones that buy. So, it's hard to tell sometimes.
For sure. Well, I want to highlight something you said, because you were talking about taking feedback, reading the comments, paying attention to your market and taking feedback. And the way that you discussed implementing the feedback is important for people to understand, which is when the feedback was there are too many testimonials, you didn't take the testimonials out. You looked at it and said, let me engage the audience and help them understand why this is in here and participate more with it. And I think that that's a really interesting way to take a lesson from the comments, as opposed to what I think most people would do, which is just shut it down and say, okay, well, people don't like this, let me kill it. So I love that.
I know how important testimonials are, because the biggest problem there's a few. I've been studying sales and persuasion tactics for honestly 6 years. I go to all these different events, whether it's virtual or in person, just to watch the whole sales process, right? To watch everything that they do. And I think that's why we've gotten so good at them, because I've been kind of obsessed with watching everybody from Russell Brunson, Peng Joon, people you've never heard of in the industry, and kind of seeing how they do things and taking bits and pieces and not taking bits and pieces, quite frankly. But the biggest problem that you have, whether you're doing event VSL, a webinar, an event, anything at all, a book that you're writing, is the hardest issue is to get the people on the other side to believe that they can actually do it, to believe that it'll work for them. The average person, their brain says, well, Krista can do it because she has pretty fake blonde hair, because whatever story they want to say. They look for reasons why it will not work for them, and their brain talks them out of wanting to do it, right? So your job, which is your hardest job out of the whole, any type of event, in my opinion, no matter what you're doing, is to get people to believe that it will actually work for them. Well, how do you get them to believe that it'll work for them? Number one, you show case studies from all different types of people, from all shapes, colors, sizes, levels of experience, you name it. You show case studies. You show that you're not a unicorn, that you're a normal, regular person, that, if you can do it, they can do it. How do you do that? By not being perfect, by showing your flaws, by being vulnerable, by being real, right? By talking about your mistakes, not making it all seem perfect. You do it by getting them to adopt a new identity, right? A new identity of I'm next, I can do that, and getting them to sort of see themselves differently. All of this is a part of ethical sales and persuasion skills to get people to take action in a way that's for their best interest at heart, right? Because we have to ethically and integrally help people. And I think a lot of people sometimes might not do it for the right reasons. Whereas everything we do is to get people to convert, because I know that if they don't say yes to themselves and allow me to help them, the chances of them doing it on their own are pretty much zero. I know the average person, which is most, won't do it, right? So I know it's my ethical obligation to get them to ethically not convince, nobody wants to be convinced, but to persuade them to say yes to themselves, which is, again, the hardest thing to do. The second thing you got to get people to do is to believe in your vehicle, to believe in what you're teaching, and to get them to believe that's the thing that I need to get me the result. That's the thing. That's the one thing. And all of their internal beliefs and external beliefs as to why it would or wouldn't work, you're dealing with during your training, right? And then lastly, to get them to know that they need your help. Those are the three things that you have to do in conjunction with seeding what you're selling the entire time. You've got to seed belief in self, belief in vehicle, believe in you the entire time. You have to seed your entire offer the entire time, why they need it, how they're going to use it, how it's going to save them money, how it's going to make them money, and exactly how they're going to apply it to their business and life from the second you take stage. And what I noticed with most sales trainers is, especially with the seeding the offer, right? They talk about all these things that no one even knows what they are when they make the offer. Or they'll bring up something one time and they never refer back to it. You've got to constantly refer back to what it is that people are going to use and how they're going to use it, because they need to be reminded 15 times, so that by the time you make the offer, people are like, oh my gosh, I can do that. Oh my gosh, I have to do that. Oh my gosh, I am doing that. No matter what, I'm doing that. And then I know exactly what it is that I'm getting, why I need it, and how I'm going to use it. And there's no doubt in my mind. That's the whole goal around doing an event. And the reason why it's 3 days is because the analytical buyer needs 3 days, whereas the emotional buyer will buy on, emotionally on day 1 or 2. But the logical analytical buyer needs a little bit more time. So there's a rhyme to everything, if that makes sense.
Super, super, super insightful. You've mentioned testing a million things. What is one of the worst mistakes that you've made?
Oh, that's a great question. So I made a $900,000 mistake in a month. We were on track to do about 3 million. And I had gotten advice from a mentor to anytime I make my offer, it's always book a call. So anytime I've ever veered from book a call with the salesperson, or anytime I've ever had more than one call to action on an offer, I've lost a substantial amount of money. So one of my mentors said, hey, just do it this way, drive traffic to the link. You'll crush it. We do every time. And I did. And we had about $367,000 book, like immediately pay. But we lost about $900,000 because of that. So we realized that we could never, ever send our clients to a link to pay for a $25,000 program. They want to speak to somebody. They need to, even though we answer all the questions as much as we can based upon questions we've gotten in the past, we've added them to the pitch, added them to what I call the irresistible life-changing offer. Even though we've done that, people still want to talk to somebody. I mean, spending $25,000 for a lot of people is like what they pay for, a down payment to a house or to a car or whatever else. So they want to talk to somebody. So the biggest mistake we made is sending people directly to a link to purchase without the ability to speak to somebody, and having more than one call to action. Those two things have been the biggest costly mistakes. And the third one is not listening to my gut regarding getting rid of employees that just don't cut it. Those three things.
That's great. The other thing that I think is great is that it's not that it didn't work. It's that you could have done so much better. And that's a scary proposition for a lot of entrepreneurs, because they'll try something and it works. So they're afraid to let go of it when it works, even though if they let go of it and did something different, it could work so much better.
That's so true. And I'm not kidding you. Like, I remember my team, they were like, I can't believe, I was actually writing my book, and my editor, I was telling her the story about how I lost the money, and I was like, oh man, that sucks. And I was upset for about an hour, and then I was like, get over it. We learned what not to do. The cool thing is number one, that same month we did it. It was virtual without me being there. So I learned I could actually do an event without having to be there and save my voice. I learned that I lost $900 because I sent traffic directly to a link, but I learned never to do it again, which, by the way, I did do it one more time and lost a significant amount of money again. We just tested it a couple months later to see maybe it was an anomaly. But no, I mean, we're not afraid we test everything, even things that are working, because even things that are working eventually can get stale or can get fatigued, right? So you always, and can do better. So we always test something. The goal is to try to only, and we've done more than one thing. We really try to only test one thing at the max 2 every single event, which we always at least test one thing. Oops, I'm not sure if he's gone or not, but we tried our best to just make sure that we only will test one thing at a time, so we know what does work or doesn't work. And then we just optimize.
What I want to talk about is I want to get some clarity on one of the themes that we keep talking about is testing and figuring out what's going to work, what's not working. You also mentioned keeping employees too long being the third huge mistake. And there's a parallel here, which is that a lot of the time, entrepreneurs are both afraid to let go of something and also just don't know what the threshold is to cut it loose. And I think that's both true when you're testing ads and when you've got an employee. And it's like, okay, well, how much bad behavior is too much bad behavior? Or at what point do we pull the plug on an ad? Do you have, and you can talk about either, but do you have a kind of a dedicated rule that you follow around how big the sample set has to be before you change something, or how you know when it's time to adjust?
Well, I have a full-time in-house ads guy, who I love. And if I would recommend, if anybody can do that, we've tried some of the biggest ad agencies out there. We spent $30,000+ a month paying for ads. People, we average about $120,000 to $200,000 a month. Recently, it's gone up a lot on our ads. And it's the best to find an in-house ads person that works full-time solely on your stuff. That's really, really good. Like, it's worth its weight in gold, because when you work for these agencies, they're not giving you all the time, right? Like, they're working with 10 different people. Their eyes cannot be as good as somebody in-house that's really, really good. So I'll give that advice. But he tests just a ton of stuff. He's constantly always testing and tweaking. And he'll know. I'll say, hey, is this ad performing? And I don't like this picture. He's like, well, it's one of our best performing ads. Like, so he knows everything. So I can say that to you. As far as employees go, what I've learned is that, in the hard way, because I don't like firing people and I hate controversy and I don't like drama or any of that kind of stuff. But I've figured out that if I have a feeling about somebody And when you have top A talent, because we have a lot of top A talent, like one of the compliments that I get from my company all the time is, my gosh, I love your team. Like I hear it literally daily. So now when you have somebody that's not cutting it, or it's just a B player, it's very easy to spot. And when you have the feeling or the inkling, you need to listen to it, because it's always right. And like recently I've tried to, let me just try to make this work for this person, and it just doesn't. And every single time, and I mean, every time I've ever had the thought, I probably shouldn't keep this person, we end up getting rid of them anyways, and then replacing them with somebody who's better. And then realizing like they weren't doing nearly as much as we thought, or as good as we thought. And somebody else can come in and take over, and that's not like you thought. You know what I mean? So I think if you think it, you're probably right. I think most entrepreneurs, especially when you're the one paying the bill, can sort of take your instincts and run with them and trust them, because in most cases, those instincts are probably correct. That's what we've found more often than not. So we're trying to listen to ourselves more.
So, okay, well, I know we've got a hard stop coming up on my end here, but I want to ask you a couple things. Specifically, we keep talking about changes in the business model, shifting the business model, tweaking new things, testing new things. You also got slammed with just the real estate market transitioning, and you were teaching the core offering. So you've got an offering to entrepreneurs now, but the core offering is to real estate agents. And I mean, I don't have to tell you this. Selling real estate in a market where it's a never-ending upward curve for real estate values going up and interest rates are basically nothing, in transitioning to interest rates double or more than double and sales just dry up. How did that impact the market that you were selling to, and how did you think about what was necessary in terms of a product to deliver them?
So I love that you're asking that, because it's been tough. I mean, real estate agents, for the first 8 months when the market shifted, it was like, oh, I've heard there's going to be a recession. I've heard there's going to be, now they're straight up like, I haven't sold a house in 6 months. I haven't sold a house in 8 months. 70,000 agents have already left the industry this year. And already in real estate, 87% of agents fail within the first 5 years. So, and the average agent only sells less than 2 homes a year. So they say it's 12, it's actually under 2. If you look at how many realtors and unlicensed realtors there are based upon how many homes that are selling, and that stat was like 2 years old. So it's probably even less than 2 homes a year now. So we adjusted our prices around $4,000, did a summer sale. Now like I said, we've never had a low ticket offer. Now we are going to be doing a lower ticket offer. We're also focusing more. I have a software company through Go High Level where we literally teach people, give them everything they need: funnels, CRM, workflows, transaction management, you name it. So now we're starting that. Like we're going to have that be like kind of the entry point in as a lower ticket free lead magnet, and then to send them up into the 3-day event and then sell them into the high ticket coaching. So it's just modifying and adjusting. I also kind of feel sort of blessed because I sort of was looking ahead a bit and realized, okay, I don't want to be so heavily dependent on one brand. We've built this brand for 5 years now. We've done really well. We're very profitable. I have all the SOPs in place. The business is at a place where it could literally sustain itself without me having to be so involved, to where a year ago we transitioned to coaching entrepreneurs. And again, way harder than I thought. I thought we're going to do 30 million in the first year. I had this crazy goal. I set it out to the world. I ran it shy by, 29.5 million. It was like the worst launch ever. But again, we realized we're learning our market. And so with that being said, I have such an amazing team, and I've spent over $1.2 million in the past 5 years in my own education and growth. And so for it to be as challenging as hard for me on a business where I already have the team and the infrastructure, I can only imagine what it's like for entrepreneurs trying to launch, which even more so tells you that people 1000% need help. I believe that if you can find the right coach that can help you, that's been there and done the thing, they can just help you through so much trial and error. There's so many things that we've learned that we just tell our students, hey, don't do this, do this. We've already done it, and we're the ones that are sort of we're figuring it out for our people, so it's not for the faint of heart starting a new business, for sure. But if you stick to it and you just keep on going and you just adapt and modify and test and just keep on going, I believe it's impossible to fail. You will not fail if you just keep going. But the problem is most people just stop. They don't see the results. They don't see the success. They take the failures as failures, which really they're something they've learned not to do, and they don't keep going. And if people would just be able to learn past that, I feel like they'd be amazed at what they could accomplish.
Well, and you had a couple of things that were highlighted early in that response, which was when the market shifted, you adjusted price point was one and iterated quickly. And then you also looked at what are other markets that are sort of parallel that might be reasonable to extend to. And the entrepreneurial market, logically to you, was an extension of what you were already doing, right? But in a totally different space that wouldn't be negatively impacted by interest rates, the real estate space, et cetera, et cetera. You also mentioned coaches and the value of coaches, which has been a theme throughout the conversation. What do you look for in a coach?
Well, somebody obviously that has the same morals and values that I do. And what I mean by that is like, you'll go to some of these conferences and it's like, let's go to the strip club and get drunk, which is not really my thing. Might be for some people, but I look for someone that's actually done the thing. I mean, I want to have, and I would highly recommend talking to people if you can that have coached with them and look at their reviews online and really do some deep research, because in my pursuit of spending $1.2+ million, I've found some great coaches and I found some really bad ones. So I would just say, make sure they align with what your values and your morals and you like them, and make sure they have a track record and they've actually done the thing. Like they've actually done the thing that you're trying to do in multiple markets for a sustainable amount of time. I think that's really, really important. And I think that's something that not a lot of people have done. I think a lot of people are experts because they're going into this new thing, but they haven't really done it. So I think it's really important to make sure that the person that you're learning from has actually done the thing that they're teaching you to do.
Awesome. Krista, I appreciate you carving out time. It is awesome to talk to you. I think that, we got really granular on marketing. And I think that, first of all, there's a huge segment of people that watch or listen to this that are going to geek out on it. And the specifics of what makes the marketing campaign work or when to adjust and the things that you tweak that is the sauce, right? That is the thing that you need to look at and play with all the time. And for those that aren't that granular, hearing how you approach it is super powerful for people. A lot of people, as you know, without getting under the hood, end up having this idea that, oh yeah, they're just really good at it and it just works for them, or they just found something that happens, right?
Yeah.
And so hearing you navigate it has been super cool. I appreciate you carving out the time. Where do you want to point people if they want to find out more about you or about the products or whatever you've got?
Yeah. So if you're a real estate agent and you want to learn more about that, you go to KristaMashore.com/unstoppable. If you're an entrepreneur and you want to learn just marketing and sales strategies and conversion tactics, you can go to theprovenmodel.com. And I'll also, Brad, I'll get you a copy of my 7 levers for 7 figures. It's just a chapter of my book that I think will really, really help people kind of like everything we talked about. It kind of goes over in much greater detail. It'll probably be very, very helpful for them.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely put it in the show notes and link to it here.
I appreciate
Krista,
it so much.
Yeah, thanks again. Until next time, hopefully I'll see you at an event here in the near future.
Yeah, I'm sure I will.
Love it. Thanks, Krista.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.
If you learned one thing on this episode, share it with another entrepreneur. They need to hear it. Also subscribe so that new episodes just show up on your phone. It's a lot easier that way. And if you want the really good stuff, check out our free BAM! Tactics and Strategies course. It's where we curate the best tips, tricks, and tools that our guests know, whether they've shared them on the podcast or not. Just go to beyondamill.com. You'll also find previous episodes and show notes at beyondamill.com.